The morning air in the city was cold, sharp, and still. A pale mist hung over the underground parking lot of Brookstone Enterprises, a place where only luxury cars and polished shoes were ever seen. The echo of footsteps, sharp and confident, filled the silence as Ethan Brooks, the CEO, walked toward his sleek black Jaguar. He wore his usual dark suit, his tie knotted perfectly, his silver hair combed back in rigid lines. Executives followed close behind, laughing too loudly at their own jokes. Trying to earn the boss's attention, none of them noticed the faint figure in the shadows near the stairwell. None of them cared. That figure was Malik Johnson, a 12-year-old boy with dark skin, tired eyes, and sneakers worn down from too many hand-me-downs. He clutched his school backpack against his chest. Malik was used to being invisible in this building, just like his mother, Angela Johnson, who had been scrubbing its floors for 10 years. Most nights, Malik sat quietly in the corners of the offices while Angela mopped, waiting for her to finish her shift. He would do his homework by the dim light of vending machines, ignored by the suits who walked past. He had learned to watch quietly, to listen carefully, because invisibility had taught him something important. People don't notice you until they need to. But this morning was different. His heart pounded like a drum, his throat dry. He had seen something the night before, something he couldn't ignore, and now the moment was here. As Ethan Brooks approached his Jaguar, Malik's breath caught in his chest. The boy's legs moved before his mind could stop them. His sneakers squealed against the concrete floor as he sprinted into the open, cutting across the executive's path. "Stop! Don't get in the car!" His voice cracked, breaking the cold silence. It echoed off the concrete walls, sharp and desperate. The group froze. Executives frowned, confused. Security guards reached for the boy immediately. One of them shouted, "Grab him!" but Malik's small frame slipped through their arms. He stopped right in front of Ethan Brooks, blocking the CEO's path with his thin body, his chest rising and falling in ragged breaths. Everyone stared. Ethan's hand, polished and steady, had been reaching for the car door handle. Now it hung in the air. His piercing blue eyes narrowed at the boy standing before him. "What on earth?" "Please, sir." Malik's voice shook but did not break. His eyes glistened with tears he had been holding back since last night. "Don't touch that car. Something's wrong. Please, just listen." The executives exchanged mocking looks. One of them, a tall man in an expensive gray suit, sneered, "Mr. Brooks, he's just a cleaner's kid. Drag him out before he makes us late." But Ethan did not move. There was something in the boy's face, an urgency, a fear that stopped him. Malik's thin hands trembled at his sides. "I saw them last night," he whispered quickly, the words tumbling out before anyone could silence him. "Two men in suits. They were under your car, near the wheels. They had tools and a black case. They were there for a long time. I didn't know what to do, but I knew it wasn't right." The air grew heavier. One of the executives rolled his eyes. "This is ridiculous. Children imagine things all the time." But Malik stepped closer, so close that Ethan could see the sweat on his forehead, the dirt on his small hands. "I swear I'm telling the truth. One of the men had a scar right here." Malik touched his forehead above his brow, and the other one had a tattoo of a snake on his neck. "I'll never forget it." They weren't supposed to be there. Ethan's sharp eyes studied the boy. His mind, trained by decades in ruthless business, began to process the details. Scar, tattoo, black case, too specific for a child's invention. Behind him, the gray-suited executive scoffed again. "Sir, this is nonsense. If you start listening to janitors' children, you'll never make it to a meeting on time again." At that moment, Angela Johnson came rushing down the stairwell, still wearing her faded blue cleaning uniform. Her face was pale, her hands trembling as she spotted her son in front of the CEO. "Malik," she cried. She pulled at his arm, her eyes darting nervously to Ethan. "What are you doing?" "I'm so sorry, Mr. Brooks. He doesn't understand. Please, he's just a child." But Malik pulled free, standing his ground, his voice louder this time. "Mom, I can't let him get in that car. If I stay quiet, something bad will happen." The executives chuckled under their breath at the absurdity, shaking their heads at the cleaner's boy daring to interrupt. But Ethan Brooks didn't laugh. He had spent his life surrounded by liars, flatterers, and schemers. And yet this boy's trembling voice carried something none of his executives ever showed him. Truth without an agenda. For a moment, the mighty CEO and the poor janitors Sons stared at each other across a line of power and invisibility. The parking lot seemed to hold its breath, and then, with a slow, deliberate voice, Ethan turned to his head of security. "Check the car, now." The laughter died instantly. Angela gasped. Malik exhaled, his shoulders trembling, and for the first time in his powerful life, Ethan Brooks realized that the smallest, most invisible voice in his empire had just shaken the ground beneath his feet. The parking lot was filled with tension. Silence pressed down like a heavy weight while the head of security knelt beside the Jaguar. His team moved with urgency, scanning, searching. The executives shifted uncomfortably. Their earlier smirks fading. Ethan Brooks stood perfectly still, his sharp eyes locked on the boy in front of him. Malik Johnson kept his fists clenched, fighting the tremor in his small hands. His mother, Angela, gripped his shoulder tightly, whispering for him to be quiet. But Malik stood firm. Moments later, the head of security rose to his feet. His face was pale, his jaw tight. "Mr. Brooks," he said slowly, "we found something unusual." A cold chill spread through the crowd. The executives leaned in. Ethan raised his brow, his voice low but commanding. "What did you find?" The guard hesitated, glancing at the boy, then back to his employer. "There's a device hidden under the chassis, wires connected to the ignition." "Sir, if you'd started the engine." The guard didn't need to finish. Gasps broke the silence. One executive muttered a curse under his breath. Angela covered her mouth in shock, tears spilling instantly. Ethan's hand fell to his side, stiff and cold. He was a man who had stared down rivals in boardrooms, who had built an empire with ruthless focus, but for the first time in years, his heart gave a heavy, uncertain thud. Death had been waiting for him inside that car, and the only reason he was still alive was because a child had shouted. He turned his gaze back to Malik. The boy's breathing was still ragged, his chest rising and falling quickly. His eyes shone with tears, but there was no sign of dishonesty, only fear and determination. "Tell me everything," Ethan said firmly. His tone was not cold now, but steady, like a judge demanding the truth. Malik swallowed hard, feeling the weight of so many eyes on him. He had been invisible all his life in this building. No one had ever asked for his opinion. No one had ever cared what he saw. Now, the most powerful man in the city was staring straight at him, waiting for his words. He took a shaky breath. "Last night, I was waiting for my mom. She was cleaning the offices on the top floors. I was downstairs, in the lobby, doing my homework by the vending machines. It was late, quiet. Nobody was around." His voice grew steadier as he spoke, as if the memory itself gave him courage. "I heard footsteps. 2 men came through the side door. They weren't cleaners. They weren't guards. They wore suits, but not like the workers here. Their suits looked rough, expensive but wrong. They moved like they didn't belong." The executives exchanged doubtful glances. Ethan raised a hand sharply, silencing them. Malik continued. "They went straight to the garage. I followed, but quietly. I know where to hide behind the pillars, where no one sees me. I saw them kneel by your car. They opened a black case, pulled out tools. I heard the sound of metal on metal, sparks. They worked for a long time." Angela's fingers dug into his shoulder nervously, but Malik pressed on. His eyes flickered with fear, but also fire. One of them had a scar big across his forehead. The other was tall, bald, with a snake tattoo on his neck. I'll never forget it. At those words, Ethan stiffened. Something in his memory stirred faces he had seen once before. In the darker corners of business deals, dangerous men tied to corruption and greed. But he said nothing. He wanted to hear more. "Did they speak?" Ethan asked. Malik nodded. "Yes. They thought no one could hear them." The one with the scar said, "The problem will be solved Thursday morning." The other one laughed and said, "He'll finally learn not to cross the wrong people." A murmur swept through the executives. Thursday morning. Today, Ethan's usual Thursday morning routine had almost ended his life. Malik's small hands trembled. "I wanted to tell someone right then, but I was scared. What if nobody believed me? What if my mom lost her job because of me? So I stayed quiet all night. But when I saw you walk into the car just now, I couldn't keep quiet anymore. I couldn't." The boy's voice cracked, his eyes filling again. Angela broke into soft sobs. She clutched his shoulders, whispering, "Why, Malik? Why did you risk this? They'll think you're lying." But Ethan didn't think so. He studied the boy's face, the raw honesty of his words. He saw no trick, no attempt to impress, just a child who had carried the weight of a secret too heavy for his young heart. The gray-suited executive, the same one who had sneered earlier, broke the silence with an irritated scoff. "Sir, this is nonsense. If you start listening to janitors' children, you'll never make it to a meeting on time again." At that moment, Angela Johnson came rushing down the stairwell, still wearing her faded blue cleaning uniform. Her face was pale, her hands trembling as she spotted her son in front of the CEO, Malik. She cried. She pulled at his arm, her eyes darting nervously to Ethan. "What are you doing?" "I'm so sorry, Mr. Brooks. He doesn't understand. Please, he's just a child." But Malik pulled free, standing his ground, his voice louder this time. "Mom, I can't let him get in that car. If I stay quiet, something bad will happen." The executives chuckled under their breath at the absurdity, shaking their heads at the cleaner's boy daring to interrupt. But Ethan Brooks didn't laugh. He had spent his life surrounded by liars, flatterers, and schemers. And yet this boy's trembling voice carried something none of his executives ever showed him. Truth without an agenda. For a moment, the mighty CEO and the poor janitors' sons stared at each other across the line of power and invisibility. The parking lot seemed to hold its breath, and then, with a slow, deliberate voice, Ethan turned to his head of security. "Check the car, now." The laughter died instantly. Angela gasped. Malik exhaled, his shoulders trembling, and for the first time in his powerful life, Ethan Brooks realized that the smallest, most invisible voice in his empire had just shaken the ground beneath his feet. The parking lot was filled with tension. Silence pressed down like a heavy weight while the head of security knelt beside the Jaguar. His team moved with urgency, scanning, searching. The executives shifted uncomfortably, their earlier smirks fading. Ethan Brooks stood perfectly still, his sharp eyes locked on the boy in front of him. Malik Johnson kept his fist clenched, fighting the tremor in his small hands. His mother, Angela, gripped his shoulder tightly, whispering for him to be quiet. But Malik stood firm. Moments later, the head of security rose to his feet. His face was pale, his jaw tight. "Mr. Brooks," he said slowly, "we found something unusual." A cold chill spread through the crowd. The executives leaned in. Ethan raised his brow, his voice low but commanding. "What did you find?" The guard hesitated, glancing at the boy, then back to his employer. "There's a device hidden under the chassis, wires connected to the ignition." "Sir, if you'd started the engine." The guard didn't need to finish. Gasps broke the silence. One executive muttered a curse under his breath. Angela covered her mouth in shock, tears spilling instantly. Ethan's hand fell to his side, stiff and cold. He was a man who had stared down rivals in boardrooms, who had built an empire with ruthless focus. But for the first time in years, his heart gave a heavy, uncertain thud. Death had been waiting for him inside that car, and the only reason he was still alive was because a child had shouted. He turned his gaze back to Malik. The boy's breathing was still ragged, his chest rising and falling quickly. His eyes shone with tears, but there was no sign of dishonesty, only fear and determination. "Tell me everything," Ethan said firmly. His tone was not cold now, but steady, like a judge demanding the truth. Malik swallowed hard, feeling the weight of so many eyes on him. He had been invisible all his life in this building. No one had ever asked for his opinion. No one had ever cared what he saw. Now, the most powerful man in the city was staring straight at him, waiting for his words. He took a shaky breath. "Last night, I was waiting for my mom. She was cleaning the offices on the top floors. I was downstairs, in the lobby, doing my homework by the vending machines. It was late, quiet. Nobody was around." His voice grew steadier as he spoke, as if the memory itself gave him courage. "I heard footsteps. 2 men came through the side door. They weren't cleaners. They weren't guards. They wore suits, but not like the workers here. Their suits looked rough, expensive but wrong. They moved like they didn't belong." The executives exchanged doubtful glances. Ethan raised a hand sharply, silencing them. Malik continued. "They went straight to the garage. I followed, but quietly. I know where to hide behind the pillars, where no one sees me. I saw them kneel by your car. They opened a black case, pulled out tools. I heard the sound of metal on metal, sparks. They worked for a long time." Angela's fingers dug into his shoulder nervously, but Malik pressed on. His eyes flickered with fear, but also fire. One of them had a scar big across his forehead. The other was tall, bald, with a snake tattoo on his neck. I'll never forget it. At those words, Ethan stiffened. Something in his memory stirred faces he had seen once before. In the darker corners of business deals, dangerous men tied to corruption and greed. But he said nothing. He wanted to hear more. Did they speak? Ethan asked. Malik nodded. Yes, they thought no one could hear them. The one with the scar said, the problem will be solved Thursday morning. The other one laughed and said, he'll finally learn not to cross the wrong people. A murmur swept through the executives. Thursday morning. Today, Ethan's usual Thursday morning routine had almost ended his life. Malik's small hands trembled. I wanted to tell someone right then, but I was scared. What if nobody believed me? What if my mom lost her job because of me? So I stayed quiet all night. But when I saw you walk into the car just now, I couldn't keep quiet anymore. I couldn't. The boy's voice cracked, his eyes filling again. Angela broke into soft sobs. She clutched his shoulders, whispering, Why, Malik? Why did you risk this? They'll think you're lying. But Ethan didn't think so. He studied the boy's face, the raw honesty of his words. He saw no trick, no attempt to impress. Just a child who had carried the weight of a secret too heavy for his young heart. The gray-suited executive, the same one who had sneered earlier, broke the silence with an irritated scoff. Sir, this is absurd. Are we really entertaining the fantasy of a janitor's kid? This will waste our entire day. Ethan turned slowly, his eyes like ice. A device was found in my car. That is not fantasy. His voice dropped to a dangerous calm. And this boy just saved my life. Show him some respect. The executive's face flushed red. He fell silent, his arrogance crumbling. Ethan returned his gaze to Malik. He lowered his voice, soft but firm. You were brave to speak up. Do you realize what that means? Malik hesitated, then nodded faintly. It means someone wanted you gone, and they'll try again. The words, spoken from the mouth of a 12-year-old, hit harder than any executive's report. Angela gripped her son tightly, torn between fear and pride. She whispered, Hush, Malik, please. But Ethan shook his head. No, let him speak. He sees what others miss. For the first time in his life, Malik realized the most powerful man in the city was listening to him, not mocking him, not ignoring him, but listening. And Ethan Brooks, who had nearly died today, understood something equally shocking. The smallest, most invisible person in his empire might be the only one telling him the truth. The underground parking lot no longer felt like a place of polished cars and important men. It felt like a trap. Every sound echoed, boots clicking, radios buzzing, nervous breathing. The men in suits, who just minutes ago mocked a child, now shifted uneasily as the head of security and his team worked with tense urgency. Ethan Brooks stood tall, but inside, a chill spread through him. He was not a man easily rattled. For 30 years, he had faced hostile takeovers, ruthless competitors, and endless threats. Yet nothing compared to the image that now haunted his mind, his own car, the machine he trusted every morning, hiding death under its sleek body. Angela Johnson stood close to her son, Malik, holding him as though her embrace could shield him from the dangerous world he had stepped into. She whispered prayers under her breath, eyes darting toward the powerful men around them. She had been invisible in this place for a decade, a ghost in a faded blue uniform. But now every gaze cut toward her family. Finally, the head of security returned. His face was pale, his gloved hands shaking ever so slightly. He held a small black device, wires coiled like snakes around it. Mr. Brooks, he said, his voice low and heavy, it's confirmed. This was connected to your ignition. A bomb. Time to trigger the moment you started the car. The parking lot fell silent. One of the executives stumbled backward, his polished shoe scraping against the concrete. Another muttered, My God, as if unable to believe the words. Angela gasped and clutched her son tighter. Malik's breath hitched. His small chest rose and fell in quick bursts. He had been right, and now the truth was out for all to see. Ethan's jaw tightened. His eyes locked on the black device, his sharp mind already spinning through possibilities. Who would dare? Who had the knowledge of his schedule, his routines? This was no random attack. This was deliberate, calculated. He turned his gaze to Malik, whose wide brown eyes were brimming with both fear and determination. "You saved my life," Ethan said quietly, almost to himself. The words made Malik blink in surprise. Never before had someone so powerful spoken to him with such weight. But before the moment could settle, one of the executives, a lean man with slick back hair, snapped. "This is insane. Surely this is some kind of setup. A janitor's boy? How do we even know he's telling the truth?" The words were like knives to Angela, who flinched as though struck, but Malik's face hardened. His voice, though trembling, cut through the doubt. "I know what I saw. I know what I heard," he said. "Two men, a scar and a tattoo, and they weren't alone." Ethan's head tilted sharply. "What do you mean?" Malik swallowed, recalling the memory with effort. "After they left the garage, I stayed hidden. I saw someone else come down. A man in a suit, someone who works here." He looked around, like he was checking, and then he nodded to the men before walking away. Gasps spread among the group. Angela's face drained of color. Malik lowered his head slightly, afraid his words might unleash fury on his family. But Ethan crouched slightly, lowering himself so he could look Malik in the eyes. "Are you certain?" he asked, his voice steady but firm. "Yes, sir," Malik whispered. His throat tightened, but his words did not waver. "I know every face here. I know the ones who walk these halls at night. He was one of yours." The CEO's eyes darkened, a betrayal within his own walls. That truth was more dangerous than the bomb itself. Angela pulled Malik back, shaking her head. "Please, sir. He's just a boy. Don't listen to him. We don't want trouble," he said. "Enough." Her voice cracked with fear. She knew powerful men destroyed families with less, but Ethan stood, his voice cutting through the murmurs like a blade. "No, he hasn't said enough. He's the only one here who's spoken the truth." The executives shifted uneasily. Some looked at Malik with contempt, others with unease, but none could deny the evidence clutched in the guard's hands. Ethan turned to the head of security. "Seal the garage. Not a single car moves until I say so." "Yes, sir," the guard barked, already directing his men. Ethan's gaze swept over his executives, men who claimed loyalty. Yet one of them might have just plotted his death. His eyes lingered on each face, watching for a flicker of guilt. He saw only masks. Finally, his gaze returned to Angela and Malik. Angela's cheeks burned with shame. Her head lowered, as though expecting dismissal, punishment, maybe even worse. But Ethan spoke softly, almost gently. "Angela, your son has more courage than most men I've met in this company, and more honesty, too." Tears welled in her eyes. She bowed her head, unable to speak. Ethan placed a hand on Malik's small shoulder. "And you," he said, his voice carrying enough weight to echo in Malik's heart forever, "have just become the most important voice in this building." Malik blinked up at him, stunned. For 12 years, he had been the shadow in the corner, the boy no one noticed. And now, the most powerful man in the city was looking at him not as a nuisance, but as a protector. The bomb lay silent in the guard's hands, its wires cut, but everyone in that garage knew something else had just exploded. A wall between power and invisibility had been shattered by the courage of a child. And though Ethan Brooks' life had been saved, he also understood one chilling truth. Someone close to him wanted him dead, and Malik Johnson had just become a witness to a war that had only begun. The bomb squad carried the device away carefully, its red wires still glowing faintly under the fluorescent lights. The underground garage, once a place of polished luxury, now felt like a battlefield after the smoke had cleared. No one spoke. No one dared. Ethan Brooks stood at the center, his presence as sharp as steel. His mind, though calm on the surface, churned like a storm. Someone inside his empire wanted him dead. Someone with access. Someone he trusted. He turned to Angela and her son. Angela still clutched Malik's shoulders as if trying to shield him from the weight of what he had stepped into. Her eyes begged Ethan to release them, to let them slip back into the shadows where they had lived for years. But Ethan was not going to let them disappear. "Come with me," he said. His voice left no room for refusal. Angela hesitated. "Sir, please, we don't want trouble. My boy has already said too much." Ethan's gaze softened for the first time in years. "Mrs. Johnson, your boy saved my life. If trouble has found us, then we face it together." Malik's eyes widened. For the first time, he felt included not as a burden, but as someone important. Inside the CEO's office, the world outside the wide glass windows glittered with skyscrapers. But the room itself felt heavy. The executives had been dismissed, leaving only Ethan, Malik, Angela, and the head of security. Ethan leaned against his desk, his sharp eyes fixed on the boy. "Tell me again, every detail. Leave nothing out." Malik swallowed. He looked at his mother, who shook her head faintly, silently pleading for him to stop. But Malik knew he couldn't. Not now. He took a deep breath. It wasn't just the scarred man and the one with the tattoo. After they left the garage, someone else came. "One of your own men. I saw his face." Angela's fingers dug into his arm. "Malik." "No." But Ethan raised a hand gently. "Let him speak." Malik's voice grew steadier. "It was Mr. Daniel Price. I've seen him before. He's always with the big meetings." He walked in after the others left. He didn't look surprised. He just checked the car, looked around, then nodded, like he already knew what they'd done. Then he left. The room fell into silence. Ethan's eyes narrowed. Daniel Price, his vice president, his right-hand man for the past 5 years, the one he trusted to handle the toughest negotiations, the one who always pushed for aggressive projects, even when Ethan hesitated. Angela trembled. "Sir, please, my son, he could be mistaken. He's only a child. He shouldn't be involved in." Ethan's voice cut through her words, steady and low. "He's not mistaken." The head of security shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, with respect, Price has access to everything. If the boy is right." He didn't finish the thought. He didn't need to. Ethan pushed off the desk and began to pace slowly. "Silvergate." Angela frowned, confused. "What?" Ethan looked out the window, his reflection cold in the glass. "A project Daniel has been pressuring me to sign for months. Silvergate Development. $1 billion plan to build luxury towers by the river. What it would mean tearing down thousands of homes, small shops, families, people who have lived there for generations." Malik's head shot up. "The river, Silvergate?" Ethan turned, surprised. "You know it." The boy nodded quickly. "Yes, last night, while Mom cleaned the top floor, I was near the conference room. I saw papers on the table, maps, contracts. I didn't touch them, but I read the name, Silvergate." Angela's face burned with shame. "Malik, you shouldn't." But Ethan leaned forward. "What else did you see?" Malik bit his lip, searching his memory. There were red circles on the map, whole neighborhoods marked with X's. One of them was where my aunt lives, down by the river. If Silvergate happens, her house will be gone. The truth slammed into Ethan like a hammer. The device in his car, the scarred men, the tattooed man, Daniel's nod, the Silvergate plans, it all connected. Someone wanted him dead so the project could move forward under new leadership. And Daniel Price had everything to gain. Ethan turned back to the boy. For years, he had dismissed children as distractions, janitors as shadows, cleaners as background noise. Yet here was a 12-year-old piecing together a puzzle even his executives had missed. "You've been watching all this time," Ethan said slowly, "haven't you?" Malik hesitated, then nodded. "When you're invisible, you notice things. People say things around you because they think you don't matter. But I see everything. I hear everything." His small hands tightened into fists. "And I knew last night that if I stayed quiet, you'd die today." Angela's eyes filled with tears. "He's just a boy," she whispered. "He shouldn't carry this weight." But Ethan shook his head. "He's not just a boy. He's the only one who saw the truth." The CEO straightened, his voice hardening into steel. "Daniel Price thinks he's clever. He thinks power is about money and greed. But he forgot something. Truth doesn't stay buried. And now, the truth has a voice." He looked at Malik. "Your voice." The boy's heart pounded. For the first time in his life, someone powerful wasn't telling him to be quiet. They were telling him to speak louder. Ethan's eyes burned with resolve. "Tomorrow, there's an investor meeting. Daniel plans to announce Silvergate as if nothing happened. But he won't get the chance. We're going to stop him." Angela gasped. "Stop him, sir. Please, this is too dangerous. These men are killers." Ethan's gaze softened slightly. "I know. But I also know this. They've underestimated us. They think a cleaner son is invisible. They think loyalty can be bought. They think I can be silenced." He leaned down, his eyes level with Malik's. "But tomorrow, they'll learn the truth, and I need your help to make sure everyone sees it." Malik's small chest swelled with a mixture of fear and courage. He nodded slowly. I'll help you. Whatever it takes. Angela's hand shook as she pulled him close. Tears rolled down her cheeks. You're just a boy, Malik. But Malik whispered back, his voice firm, not anymore. He following afternoon. The top floor of Brookstone Enterprises was a world of glass and steel, polished to perfection. The boardroom stretched wide, its long oak table shining under the golden lights. 50 investors sat in tailored suits, murmuring in low voices, waiting for announcements that would determine billions of dollars. At the head of the table stood Daniel Price, tall and confident, his silver cufflinks glinting as he smiled at the audience. To the untrained eye, he was every inch the perfect executive, smooth, charming, decisive. To Ethan Brooks, watching from the shadows near the entrance, he was something else, a traitor who had tried to kill him. Daniel raised his glass of water and tapped it gently. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming. Today, Brookstone Enterprises turns a new page, an exciting chapter of growth and progress. His smile widened, and the room quieted. Behind the scenes, tucked just outside the glass doors with a small tablet in hand, Malik Johnson stood with his mother. The boy's palms were sweaty, his heart racing, but his eyes burned with focus. Ethan had trusted him with this moment, and he would not fail. Angela knelt beside him, whispering, Stay calm, baby. Just do what Mr. Brooks showed you. Malik nodded, invisible no more. He was about to reveal the truth to a room full of millionaires. Inside, Daniel continued, his voice smooth as silk. As you know, our CEO narrowly avoided a tragic accident yesterday. Security has handled the situation, and I'm pleased to assure you all that Brookstone Enterprises is safe. He spread his hands like a preacher, which means we can move forward with our most ambitious project yet, Silvergate development. The screens behind him lit up with slides of glittering towers by the river, futuristic and pristine. These towers will redefine the skyline. Profits will soar, and communities by the river, though outdated, will be renewed. Gentlemen, this is the future. Polite applause rippled through the room. Investors leaned forward, hungry for numbers. Daniel's smile grew sharper. As acting CEO, in light of recent threats, a voice cut through the applause. That decision will never be made. The room froze. Every head turned toward the doors, and there he was, Ethan Brooks, alive, steady, his presence commanding silence. Gasps erupted. Some investors rose to their feet. Daniel's face drained of color, but he forced a laugh. Ethan, my friend, I was just reassuring our partners after yesterday's scare. Ethan's lips curled into a thin smile. Scare? Let's call it what it was. Attempted murder. A shocked murmur filled the air. Daniel spread his hands innocently. Surely you don't mean. But Ethan raised his hand, cutting him off. Let's hear the truth from someone who actually saw it. On cue, Malik stepped into the room, clutching the tablet tightly. The executives frowned. Investors whispered in confusion, what was a child doing here? Angela followed quietly, her head bowed, but her eyes locked on her son with quiet pride. Daniel's voice cracked. What is the meaning of this? Ethan gestured toward Malik. This boy saved my life. He saw who planted that device, and he saw who checked it afterward. Daniel's mask slipped for a moment, a flicker of panic flashing across his face, but he quickly composed himself. This is absurd. Are we really letting the janitor's child interrupt? Play it, Ethan ordered. Malik's small fingers tapped the tablet. Instantly, the room's massive screens flickered. Then, a recording began to play security footage Ethan's team had pulled from the cameras Malik knew existed in hidden corners. The room watched in stunned silence as the grainy video showed two men crouched by Ethan's Jaguar, sparks flying as they worked. Their scar and snake tattoo were unmistakable. Moments later, another figure entered the frame. Tall, familiar. The camera caught his face clearly as he nodded in approval. Daniel Price. Gasps turned into shouts. Chairs scraped as investors leaned forward in disbelief. Daniel's smile collapsed. This is fabricated, he shouted, his voice high and desperate. He's lying. This is a setup. Ethan's eyes were cold. Lies don't leave email trails. He nodded again to Malik, who tapped another file. The screens lit up with emails, transfers of money, secret instructions, and one line that made the investor's blood run cold. The problem will be solved. Thursday morning, Silvergate moves forward immediately. Daniel's name was at the bottom of every email. Chaos erupted. Investors shouted. Some stood, Others glared at Daniel with fury. You tried to kill him. One of them roared. You wanted control for yourself. Daniel's face turned red, then pale. He slammed his fist on the table. This boy, this janitor's brat, he's lying. You'll believe a child over me. All eyes turned to Malik. For a moment, the boy's legs trembled, but then he raised his chin and spoke clearly, his voice cutting through the storm. No, Mr. Price, you destroyed yourself when you thought people like us didn't matter. I just showed them the truth. The room went dead silent. Ethan stepped forward. His gaze locked on Daniel. You forgot, Daniel, power isn't about silencing others. It's about listening, and you failed. At that moment, the doors burst open. Federal agents swept in, badges flashing. The head of security stepped aside as the agents moved straight to Daniel. Daniel Price, you're under arrest for attempted murder, conspiracy, and corporate fraud. The sound of handcuffs clicking shut echoed like a hammer on steel. Daniel struggled, shouting wildly, you don't understand. I built this company as much as he did. It should have been mine, but no one listened. Investors turned away. Disgusted, agents dragged him out as his voice cracked into nothing. Ethan turned to the room, his voice calm, steady, but filled with fire. Gentlemen, you've just seen the truth. My life was saved by someone most of you never noticed. His name is Malik Johnson, the son of our cleaning staff. He is braver than most of us in this room. The investors broke into applause, not polite this time, but genuine, thunderous applause that echoed off the glass walls. Angela wept silently, watching her son stand tall in a room where once he would have been invisible, and Malik, clutching the tablet to his chest, realized something he had never thought possible. His voice, small as it was, had changed the course of an empire. The boardroom had fallen silent after Daniel Price was dragged away in handcuffs. The echoes of his furious shouts faded down the hallway, replaced by something no one expected: applause. It wasn't forced applause or the hollow kind used to fill awkward silence. It was genuine. Investors, executives, and staff all clapped their hands together, their eyes fixed not on Ethan Brooks, the billionaire CEO, but on a 12-year-old boy clutching a tablet. Against his chest, Malik Johnson, son of a cleaner, had just unmasked corruption, exposed betrayal, and saved the life of the most powerful man in the company. For a moment, the entire room forgot who he was. He wasn't a janitor's son anymore. He was the boy who spoke the truth. When everyone else stayed silent, Angela Johnson stood at the edge of the room, her cleaning uniform wrinkled, her eyes overflowing with tears. She had worked here for 10 years without a single executive ever learning her name. Yet now, in front of a sea of millionaires, her son was being celebrated. She pressed her hand to her lips, whispering, "Thank you, God." The new beginning. That evening, the city skyline glowed with the lights of success. But inside Ethan Brooks' office, something brighter was happening. Ethan stood by the wide glass window, his reflection tall and commanding, but for the first time, there was warmth in his expression. Malik and Angela sat across from him, still looking like they weren't sure they belonged in such a polished space. "You've both been invisible here for too long," Ethan said, his voice softer than his usual sharp tone. "That ends today." Angela shook her head quickly. "Sir, we don't need." Ethan held up a hand. "This isn't charity. This is justice." He looked directly at Malik. "You saved my life. You exposed a plot that would have destroyed this company. I owe you more than I can ever repay." Malik lowered his eyes shyly, gripping the straps of his backpack. I didn't want to stay quiet." Ethan smiled faintly. "And that's exactly why you're remarkable." He turned to Angela. "As of now, you're promoted to operations supervisor. You'll no longer clean these floors. You'll oversee the teams that keep this building alive. A raise, an office, the respect you deserve." Angela's lips parted in shock. Tears ran freely down her cheeks. "Mr. Brooks, I don't know what to say." "Say yes," Ethan replied simply. Then he crouched down in front of Malik, so their eyes were level. "And you, young man, I want you as part of this company too. Not as a janitor's son, as a consultant. You see things others miss. You notice what others ignore. That's a gift. If you'll allow it, I'd like you to help me make this company safer, smarter, and more honest." Malik's breath caught. He was only 12, but in that moment, he felt taller than he ever had in his life. He nodded firmly. "I'll help. I promise." A changed company. Months passed. Brookstone Enterprises was no longer the same. Ethan once known for his cold distance, had reshaped his empire into something stronger and more human. He introduced a new program called Voices of the Invisible. Every cleaner, guard, secretary, and maintenance worker had the chance to report what they saw, to share what they knew. For the first time, the people who had always been overlooked became the company's hidden strength. Problems were caught before they grew, corruption was exposed, and new ideas flowed from places no one had expected. At the heart of it all was Malik. He no longer hid in the shadows of vending machines. Now he walked the halls in a neat suit Ethan had bought him, carrying a badge that read Youth Consultant, Internal Security. The staff whispered his name with pride, the boy who saved the CEO. Angela thrived in her new role too. Her years of unnoticed work gave her unmatched knowledge of the building, and now executives reported to her. She no longer felt invisible. She was a leader. The community impact bit, the biggest change came outside the walls of the skyscraper. Ethan canceled Silvergate development permanently. Instead of tearing down riverfront homes, the company invested millions into rebuilding the neighborhoods, repairing schools, opening parks, and creating job programs. Families that once lived in fear of losing everything were given hope instead. On the day the new Riverside Community Center opened, Malik stood on the stage beside Ethan and Angela. Reporters snapped photos, children cheered, and families filled the park with laughter. Ethan spoke to the crowd, his deep voice echoing across the river. Months ago, I almost lost my life because I ignored the invisible, but a boy with courage reminded me that true power isn't measured by money, it's measured by listening. Malik Johnson showed us that even the smallest voice can change the world. The crowd erupted in applause, but Malik's cheeks turned red. He leaned toward his mother and whispered, "Mom, they're clapping for me." Angela hugged him tightly. "They're clapping because you were brave when no one else was." From invisible to unstoppable that night, as Malik lay in his new bed in a small but beautiful apartment Ethan had provided for them, he stared at the ceiling. His world had changed completely in just a few months. He remembered the parking lot, the shouts, the fear in his chest when he yelled, "Stop." Back then, he thought no one would listen to him. Now, the entire city knew his name. Angela tucked the blanket around him, her hands still rough from years of scrubbing floors. "Do you regret it, Malik, speaking up that day?" Malik shook his head. "No, Mom. If I'd stayed quiet, Mr. Brooks would be gone, and we'd still be invisible. But now people see us." Angela kissed his forehead, tears in her eyes. "You were born to be seen, son." As she switched off the lamp, Malik whispered to himself, almost like a promise, "Invisibility isn't a curse, it's a power, and I'll use it to make sure nobody like us is ignored again." The city lights glowed outside the window, and in that moment, Malik knew he was no longer just the cleaner's son. He was unstoppable.